Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Curbs IndyCar Edition. I'm your host, Nate Woods, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Mr. Thiemo Albers-Daly. How we doing, Thiemo?
IndyCar back, mate. I mean, it's been back, but we were just saying before we hit record, this feels like the most IndyCar race we've had since sometime last season. So
Yeah,
I'm good. How are you?
yeah, I'm doing great. The Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix finally delivered.
Yeah, I mean, who'd have thought? I mean, it's again, I hadn't realized as much. Again, it's very easy to see the gaps in my IndyCar knowledge here that we haven't actually been in Detroit racing for that long on this particular circuit. But in the entire time I've been watching it, it's been there. And I've
Yeah.
always enjoyed it. I was like, oh, Detroit, obviously you have the automatic connection with everything automotive. You put IndyCar in, I'm like, yes, I'm there. Street course, bumpy, there's a bridge, it's narrow, there's a nice
Mhm.
sweeping first turn. There's lots to love about it. And like you say, it delivered. And it just, even with the cautions and even the red flag that we got our first red flag, it felt like. In,
Yeah.
God knows how long. Again, I'm trying to think, did we have one Indy? Probably, but that's all a blur for me. But for this, it just all felt like it went really smoothly as a viewer. Obviously, not
Mhm.
so much for those in the cars.
Yeah.
And it was just nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It was nice to get back to kind of a resemblance of what we're used to in IndyCar, I think.
Definitely.
So, I think, to get it out of the way, just to let everybody know, Alex Palou did not win the
That
race.
that helped.
Yeah, and actually didn't finish the race. This is the first race
Yeah.
he hasn't finished all season. So, yeah, Kyle Kirkwood is our winner. Yeah, kind of going back to what we were saying. Oh, it felt like a real IndyCar race. Well, we've still only had two winners this season.
Did also think that. But I thought if it had to be anyone winning when Pelot wasn't, I don't mind it being Kirkwood because admittedly the second, third, fourth, fifth place in the championship are a bit helter skelter at the moment, but he's one of the drivers that is most in a position to do something about Pelot. So if there was a driver to win, as much as Santino Ferrucci had an amazing day and an amazing weekend, sort of glad he didn't win because I'm looking at the long game of how do we beat Alex Pelot this season. I'm sorry, Santino, but it's not going to be you doing
It's
it.
not going to be you. Yeah. Currently sitting 10th in the points, so little far out.
Yeah, and if few other things to happen first before I consider him to be in serious contention
A
there. So you know
title
what?
contender.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Well, we had a lot of race notes, as they typically do when we go through and we watch these races live. I'm sitting at the computer typing notes for lap after lap. And I have to say, this is
This tested you, I think,
probably
first time
probably
properly
one
this
of
season.
the longest. This was only 100 lap race, and felt like it was over before it started, even with the red flag. Um, but this is a long series of notes that I wrote.
Well, yeah,
I think
100 laps. It feels like you've got a lap, a note for almost every lap there. It's like, oh my days,
feels
when did
like.
something not happen?
And not that the on-track product was terribly great. I think this configuration of the street course in Detroit is leaves a little to be desired with passing opportunities. And but typically when you do get a pass, it's pretty hairy, I feel like. The passing
Yeah,
areas are always like, are they gonna hit? Are they
well,
gonna
there
touch?
was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Well,
And
the prime example was on the first lap, I think, wasn't it, with Pelot going past whichever driver was possibly Herter, I think. I mean, there were so many kind of moves all around the place, but it was that sort of, I'm just going to give you a little nudge. Nothing too bad, but just a little nudge because I need to do that if I'm going to successfully get past and not go into the wall, and you're not going to go into the wall. So we're just going to just work with me here. I know I'm overtaking you, but still just work with me to make this happen because that's the
yeah,
only way it's going to be done successfully.
yeah, you can tell that there was some drivers that were getting frustrated on track, I think, that were uh, willing to use the old chrome horn, as we say in NASCAR. And of course, those drivers were penalized. Now there were, I think we had what, five cautions during the race.
Felt like
Um,
more.
yeah, and um, in a 100 lap race where your lap times are roughly a minute. it feels like um, that that's a lot, but it didn't feel like it. But there were a couple. There was one crash in particular, and was the one towards the end of the race that I think really stands to be highlighted. That was the um, the crash between Foster and Rosenquist. Um,
Yeah,
not of any fault of either one of the drivers. Foster had a suspension that failed, and that was a pretty scary incident.
yeah. The I hesitate to say this quite so serious, so immediately after you say serious, but the one amusing aspect was that I think pretty much in synchronization with all three commentators, I also audibly gasped
Yeah,
just as they did, and were oh,
yeah.
and just
Well,
it was it kind of a little bit of the gravitas out of the situation, saying, and then you're like, okay, now we can focus again, and make sure that they're both all right, because again, I think they were saying that the speed with which Foster had to go into those barriers to get that deep into
mhm,
the barriers in the first place shows just how much speed he was carrying. And then when you factor in that that's with a broken suspension, that's quite serious. And obviously,
yeah,
the angle that Rosenquist came in was probably one of the better angles to come in at. At least it wasn't a head-on thing. He still had
right.
a bit of a leg issue, which
Mhm.
kind of just want to say, hopefully just walk that off, but it wasn't quite as easy as that. Unfortunately, I had to take away and
Yeah,
look at it properly. But I think it highlighted both the seriousness and the preparedness of the track and how kind of comfortably they crashed as a result of it. Like you say, the tire barrier that was there was perfectly designed to withstand such an impact and make
mhm,
sure that it was damage limitation. And because Rosenquist was able to, well, he was already turning, but he was able to kind of steer into the crash a little bit. It felt like he kept the hands on you saw on the onboard and just managed to keep it relatively even, so that again he was hurt, but not as badly as I feel like it could have been had he hit that head on, or had maybe we've seen cars flip for less. For example, he could have easily flipped and gone upside down into that barrier, and it would have been a lot worse that way. So I think serious, but testament to the skill of the
mhm.
drivers and the safety precautions. And that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Another issue that we had on track that I'm not sure how you can have this many during a race, but it feels like teams were having issues getting the tires on. And I don't know whether this is a result of the strange pit lane that we've got in Detroit, where it's the double lane, um, that maybe threw teams
Instinctively don't
off.
want to blame that
But
because it's such a cool layout and
it
such a
is,
unique
yeah,
thing.
it
Like it
really
can't
is.
be that. It's
Yeah,
the teams.
let's
They're the
not blame
races.
that. Yeah. And so, there were several drivers that either lost a wheel on track, which is incredibly dangerous, um, or in the case of like Rahal, where you have trouble getting tire on and off, and lug nuts stuck. That's another issue for for
I
them
feel
to
like
figure
I've
out.
used the
But
word lug nut more times this year than in the rest of my entire life combined. It's mad.
Yeah. And I mean, I get that it's all about trying to get your team out, get your car out as fast as possible. And this is something that they practice over and over and over again. But to have these types of issues in a race like this, I mean, thank God we've got the aero screen now.
Hmm.
You
It
know,
does feel more feeder series though, doesn't it? It feels like this would be the kind of instance you'd have where there's a team where by design you have less people working on it because pit stops are not a major factor in the racing, or it's a factor of the races, but they don't happen that often, so you're not going to have had as much practice in the pit stops.
yeah.
But this is IndyCar; it's one of the top tiers of motorsport. You should know what you're doing at this point in time, and like you say, for it to be not even just like the same team over and over again, it's multiple teams, multiple different drivers, and across multiple races in a
Mhm.
season. I go, what are you doing here? I mean, I saw the highlights just before we recorded for the NASCAR race that was in Nashville, and one of the commentators was saying that one of the drivers, I forget who now, but they had a brand new pit crew team in from like about a month ago, and it's turned things around so dramatically for them, and it's fixed so much, and the only driver I could say of that in for this race in particular for IndyCar is Colton Herta. Everyone else seemed to have some kind of, somewhat ironically as well,
Yeah,
but everyone
right.
else seemed to have no idea kind of thing. There was always something happening, and you just wonder, are we in short supply for pit crew? Do you have to dust down your overalls, Nate, and you got to go back out there and give it another go? What are
That's
we doing
right.
here?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to suit up one more time and give it a whirl, right? Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Colt Hurley. He seemed like the only one that didn't have a problem on pit road today, or during that yesterday during the race. And, yeah, just very. If you're going to have something that's uh, very out of the ordinary for your team, that would be the best thing to have for him, because it always seems like he's the one that is having the bad pit stop or something happening on pit road that takes him out of contention. That wasn't the case in this race, though, for him. So,
Oh, thank. Again, interestingly, same weekend that Fernando Alonso gets points in Formula One. They both have a good
for,
weekend.
yeah,
The
right.
unlucky club finally got lucky. I need to investigate that more as the season goes on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tell you, once we got back to green after that last caution and with the red flag, that was a that was a neat finish.
It was very nice, and again, a strange mirror now that I'm thinking about it too. The Formula One in Spain, we had kind of a last minute dash to the line where there was plenty to talk about, and luckily in the IndyCar case, it was less controversial, more just damn good racing.
Mhm.
And a little bit like we've said at early points in the season, we had drivers there in places that we're not used to seeing them in. And it was
Yeah.
just quite nice. I mean, again, you had Canada, you had Kirkwood, but ordinarily you would have had Pillow in there as well. But I feel like the other driver would still have been there, regardless if Pillow had been there or not. It would just been a matter of in which position. And it's just quite nice to see that as well, because it does spice things up in a season where it's not a guarantee that Pillow's
Mhm.
winning. But if we put that to one side and just assume that's the case, at least we're still getting a lot of interesting stuff behind him, and that's continuing on as we've seen here. I mean, even Colton Hurt, it was just nice to see him not have a bad weekend. I don't want to keep going on about him, but it's this driver where we expect a lot from him, and a lot of times through no fault of his own has just not been there. So to see him up there in the fight, to see Power coming back in, but then to see Simpson, to see Ferrucci, it's just good to see Armstrong even in P6.
Yeah, I mean there was some different pit strategies that were going on that got some drivers up towards the front that we don't normally get to see. I think it was the restart after uh, Pillow had been knocked out by Malukas. I think is
Mm,
when we really started, was when we had Ferrucci that was in the lead. Um, was it Kiffin Simpson was in second or third, I think.
think so, yeah.
And Kirkwood, he was driving with his elbows out, and he almost paid the ultimate price. And I'm glad that we didn't see uh, any accidents that were his fault because I mean, he really was driving the wheels off that car and doing his best to knock the wheels off other cars, I think. I think, yeah, I think when he restarted with fourth, um, was Christian Lundgaard was in third and immediately passed him.
Yes.
There was some questionable dive moves made there. Uh, and then when he passed Simpson for second, there was contact. And
It,
uh, that front wing, I mean,
mm.
surprising that held on for almost, I mean, it
Is it
had to hold on
the
for like
amount of
quarter
the
of the
amount of front
race.
wings that were quite durable across the field
Yeah.
with different drivers? You go, I don't know what you've reinforced that with this weekend, but it seems a lot tougher than usual. I'm not against it because again, I don't mind hard aggressive driving and slightly on the line kind of moves because it shows that it's the drivers really pushing it and that's what you want to see. As long as it doesn't go over the line, you can kind of wobble a little bit when you're trying to
Yeah.
balance on the line, and that's
Yeah.
fine. I don't mind too much of that because again, the majority of the time, it's not going to be intentional. It's just going to be misjudged. Say, like a
Mhm.
few of the moves we saw towards the end of the race where overtakes were attempting to be made and didn't quite get there,
Mhm.
and that's fine because it's what we're there to see, and it was nice that we got that again in a race that already had a lot of other stuff for us to go into cars kind of bank. Not that it went
Yeah.
away, but traditional IndyCar is here.
Well, once Kirkwood got out front, I think it was everybody else's job to try to catch him in those final 10 laps or so. Kirkwood ended up winning by,
Everybody else failed.
yeah, he ended up winning by 3.6 seconds over Santino Ferrucci. Herta and Power battle for the last spot on the podium was a fun one to watch there at the end. Uh,
It was, especially with the
just
amount of
the
push to pass
Yeah, I was
talent
just getting ready
being
to say that they,
deployed.
they kept popping that push to pass, and the commentators were even counting it down. I think
Hmm.
that last lap when Will Power is using up the very last of it, and
To an
uh,
extent, I feel like it's really rare for us to actually see all of push to pass get used by a driver because whenever they bring it up on the graphic towards the end of the race, there's still like a stonking amount of it left. And I mean, I don't know if you get a graphic to tell you afterwards how much was left, and because it doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things. But it's rare for me to try and find a memory of going, oh, you actually run out. I'm just so used to
mhm.
them, even if it's only 5 or 10 seconds. No one I can remember has ever really used all of it. I like the
I
power. Just I
I
need to
think
try and do
I,
everything I can here.
I feel like everybody in the top 10 used up their push to pass or had just a few seconds left, with the exception of Kyle Kirkwood. If I remember
Hmm.
correctly, the graphic showed that he still had like over 50 seconds left of push
Yeah,
to
I was going to say, I
pass.
think like 50,
And
52 seconds. I don't know.
yeah,
How have you managed to do that's kind of even more impressive. Again, where have you been the rest of the season?
right, right. So this was we had career best finishes by several drivers this
Yeah,
weekend.
which again,
Uh,
not something we were expecting coming into this.
yeah, Santino Ferrucci obviously with second place finish, his career best. Um, Kevin Simpson got his first top five of his career. So definitely a career finish for him. And then Jacob Abel. We don't get to talk about him very often in a good
Yeah, so I
positive
wouldn't have
light.
thought P18 would have been something to write home
P18
about,
is
but I'm
his
happy to do
career
it.
best, yeah. And but fourth career win for Kyle Kirkwood. Um, and all of those have come on street courses. So obviously the commentators were saying that he was the king of street courses. I'm like, okay, hold on a second, guys. He's only won four races. I mean, I know we're excited that somebody other than Pelot has won, but I
It
think
did,
it
it
might
did
be a
make me
little
think back
early.
of when commentators were calling Sergio Perez king of the streets. I'm going, yeah, yeah, but let's again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. He's done well on a few of these in
Yeah,
one go.
yeah,
Consistent. If he does this for the next 10 years, okay, then we can
yeah,
talk about it.
yeah,
And then listen, 2 years later, he's gone right. Okay, no, no,
yeah.
no, I think we're gonna have to relinquish that one.
One interesting stat that they flashed on the screen after the race was this is the first time since 2006 that only two drivers have won the first seven races.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There was one I heard. Well, I'm struggling to remember it now, but can't remember. I think it's not been the case for 20 years or just over 20 years since the winner of the Indy 500 actually won or got on the podium at the following race. And
Yes.
weirdly, that was Montoya of all people who managed to
Yeah.
do that last
Yeah.
time. So, although was maybe always destined to not do well here.
Yeah. And uh yeah, I mean that I think it was kind of watching the replays of his accident where he got rear-ended by Malukas. I was kind of, if we're going to penalize Malukas with a drive-through, I feel like that was maybe a little strong of a penalty. And with as much contact as Kirkwood made in the closing 20 laps of the race, that maybe that could have possibly warranted if we're using the Malukas
Well,
incident
yeah, we
as
always
the
want to have a consistent kind of
yeah,
application of penalties across the board, don't we? Otherwise, it gets frustrating. And as a driver as well, you go, well, what can I get away with then? What do I
yeah,
risk? Because on one hand, yeah, you like you say, if you're Kirkwood, you'll keep doing what you're doing and you'll be fine. And then Malukas, you again, that was not an intentional thing. I think that was just shit happens basically. That's
yeah,
racing, and that's not your race over, but that's definitely going to severely compromise it on what is a very short street circuit. Like you say, that the lap times are very quick, and I think the layout of it for me still bamboozles me because it strikes me as a course that is a lot longer than it actually is. And then somehow it's lap 10 already. I go, where's that come from? Um, But I think with the penalties again, we have this across all of motorsport. The consistency is, or the lack of consistency is the only consistent thing, ironically.
Yeah. I still wish we were at Belle Isle. I'll be honest. I miss Belle Isle.
Start your petition. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, well, I think the residents around Belle Isle have kind of poo-pooed the idea of going back there. I think we're stuck with this road course for a while. So
I don't mind it, but admittedly, I've never had anything else, so you're just
that's
gonna have
true.
to deal with that with me, unfortunately.
But yeah, let's take a look at the team analysis. Team Penske, I think, I mean, all things considered, I think had a decent day. You have Will Power that finished fourth, just outside the podium, fighting with Colton Herta there at the end. Scott McLaughlin finishes 12th, and then Joseph Newgarden, a great day for him. I feel like qualified horribly and managed to sneak his way into the top 10.
Yeah, New Garden taking on Power's role here with qualifying behind McLaughlin and finishing ahead of him when McLaughlin qualifies ahead of him in the first place and go,
Yeah.
damn it, what am I doing wrong? I was going to say that it was a much needed drama-free weekend for Penske, and then I remembered about Will Power, particularly with Kirkwood in FP1,
Yeah.
which, I mean, that in itself, but I'm amazed that nothing came of it. But as the commentators said, I think during practice, there isn't actually a rule that says you can't do that. And it's one of these quite amusing things of show me the rule that says I can't do it, and then you get this giant fat book out and they slam it shut and go, damn, we don't have anything. We're gonna have to fix that for next time. Because I guess it was something that you'd just assume was common sense not to do ordinarily, because why on earth would you do something
Yeah.
like that and push them along? But great drama. Um,
I made the
how
comment uh, after that practice session that Power was just checking uh, Kirkwood's attenuator for glue residue. Needed to get a nice close look at it.
yeah, just checking everything's above board here. We don't want any accusations now, would we? I think,
But
however, with the way he's driving, I mean, so close to the winner points, obviously so close to the podium, but I think even with those elements of drama, he's still really putting in a lot of strong results, all things considered, with how Penske's season's been going so far.
mhm,
And they said in commentary that once again there have been rumours about Malukas replacing him next year. I think of the three drivers at that team right now, Power's the only one who should definitely stay. And maybe that's the controversial opinion here. We'll find out in a second. But Newgarden, we know he can get through a pack, but his
mhm,
qualifying's terrible. He's only had one podium this year, and McLaughlin, he's doing fine.
mhm.
But also, you're Scott McLaughlin.
You expect more.
You know, you're at Team Penske, so
Yeah.
I feel like Will Power is okay. He's not. He's also not where we want him to be, but he's the only one from kind of a spectator perspective that is going out of his way to kind of throw everything he has at it, regardless. He's the only one you see consistently kind of making his way up through the pack, fighting,
Mhm.
and you see him on the screen, you see him getting decent unit points. You think back to what, Alabama, there was some great stuff with him there, and I think where was it? Maybe Long Beach as well. I'm trying to think. There was one other race where he was again really pushing it forward, and you go, I see him the most, and he feels like the commentators are always talking about him, and you don't hear much about the other two.
Yeah,
And sometimes
it's
anonymous
definitely
race can be good, but then you see the results and you go, well, that's the least I would expect. That's kind of maybe where you should be starting these races, not finishing.
it's definitely been a strange season for Penske to say the least. And but yeah, I mean with Power's fourth place finish, yeah, that did move him into the top five in points.
Which prior
So
to the weekend, I think none of the drivers were in the top seven of the
yeah,
championship.
yeah.
So
So
that's
uh,
again another good reason to maybe keep him and look at the other two and go,
yeah,
actually.
he and honestly, I don't. I feel like personally his spot at Penske is safe, but I mean, you never know. If you can string together, a couple more top five finishes, especially as we approach the second half of the season,
Hmm.
that's a good way to seal your fate. with that ride for next year,
Yeah,
but also could go the other way where you have, you string together three or four bad finishes, bad performances, um, then then the talk of power being out at Penske for next season may be warranted.
yeah. I'm going to say that it's the old saying, isn't it? You're only as good as your last race. But
Yeah.
if that's the measure, then I still think Power's doing all right.
Because I think, you mentioned Malukas possibly replacing him. I mean, Santino Ferrucci is also got to be in the talk as
Yeah,
well.
you'd have
So,
to argue that now, wouldn't you?
yeah.
Exactly.
So, Arrow McLaren was kind of I mean, Siegel getting hit with um, two penalties throughout the race. Two drive-through penalties pretty much ruined his day where he finished. He was two laps down in 19th. And Christian Lundgaard, you know, I think the tire strategy kind of bit him, you know, going into that next to
Yeah,
last, coming out of that next to last caution flag where he was running third. He just got swallowed up. You kept seeing him fall down the order and finishes in eighth place. And then Pettit Award, kind of the opposite, kind of started 18th and managed to work his way into the top 10 and finish seventh. And he definitely had some choice words about his feelings of this track, this course after the race.
to award with an opinion on something. That's
I
unlike
know.
him, isn't it? I think yeah, with Lundgaard, it was a shame. We were beaten by some unexpected drivers, but at the same time, those drivers had absolutely nothing to lose by going for it, and it's these drivers again that we're not used to seeing in these top sort of spots. But in contrast to that, it's Christian Lundgaard during their McLaren. You've been doing pretty well this season. You should be able to keep them behind or find you if your tires aren't there, you find another way to make your car wide, and you
Yeah.
you prevent that. Um, I also think just I was watching the pre-race build up and Jack Harvey. Maybe it's Jack Harvey. I don't know. We all seem to like him. I don't know if it's a thing with Christian Lundgaard or if it's just a Christian Lundgaard general thing, but I feel like he could do with maybe a little bit more media training or just cheering the fuck ups a little bit, to be perfectly honest, because he just see like there's the Finnish charm that Kimi Räikkönen has, and you see with some danger like the Kevin Mayers and these sorts of people. Lundgaard, maybe I've just not seen enough of him yet, but I've yet to see that be disarming or likable. He just
Yeah.
seems like he would wish to be anywhere but there. And that makes it harder for me to be kind to him after a race like this, where I kind of expect a bit better from him.
Yeah.
So that bothered me more than the race. I feel like in some ways, come on, Jack's just trying to do his job,
Yeah.
and you're giving a fine answer, but it looks like someone's just told you that they've blown up your car or something. It's cheer up. You're having a pretty decent time. You're in a great team, great sport. Life's not too bad. Have a smile. It's all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I mean, sitting in the top five in the championship as well, you gotta have to be a little bit
Exactly.
happy about that, right?
I'd be happy. I'd be taking that. It's like
Yeah.
strive for more, but you're at top five. You're in McLaren. Get on with it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we really, at some point during the season, they're going to have to take a look at whether or not, and this is the team at Aaron McLaren, they're going to have to take a look at Nolan Siegel's money that has been brought to the team and decide, is this really worth it?
Is yeah.
Because you've got two drivers, Pat O'Ward and Christian Lundgaard, in the top five in points, and then you have Nolan Siegel way down in 21st place.
Going to make a perhaps unfair comparison here, but I'm still going to make it, and that's going to be you look at how Franco Colapinto did in Williams last year, and how the good results outweighed the bad results to the point that people seem to forget the bad results, and Alpine have gone out of their way to put him in the car, and obviously that's not gone to plan so far. It strikes me a little bit similar in that respect of he when he was there last year in IndyCar, Nolan Siegel was we were all kind of excited for him. We're kind of going, okay, this is interesting. I like that. I'm not necessarily a big fan of the way it came about, but that you can't always choose that as a race driver. Fine. And he did a decent job, and now he's in there permanently. You go, oh, where's all that gone? Because it's one of the things that at the start of a season you let it slide. You go, okay, he's been out of the car for a little bit, rookie, da 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 da. But there is a point in the season where you go, you've had a few races now, and I don't, like we said from about other rookies, we don't need you to be winning and finishing in the top 10 consistently. We just need to see that improvement. And you said about Jacob Abel earlier, three best finish today, 18th. Might only be 18th, but you see that improvement and that's going in the
Yeah.
right direction. That's enough for me.
Hmm.
So we need that from Siegel.
Yeah. Yeah. Andretti Global, I think definitely the best of the teams this weekend for sure. Obviously, you have Colton Herta starting on the pole, finishes on the podium in third. Kyle Kirkwood starting third, finishing first. And then Marcus Ericsson just kind of status quo, starts 13th, finishes 13th.
I
Um,
think after last weekend, he's probably pretty happy with that overall. But at
I
least
would say
there's
so, yeah.
nothing going on here.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean,
I wrote
great
I wrote
weekend.
down Colton Herta finally had a good pit stop.
Yeah.
I was made from it that one. I don't care what else happens here. We got the pit stop. It's not the thing ruining it for him.
Yeah, and not just that, but string together four good pit stops. So,
Yeah, I was happy taking just the first one. I was like, you know what? After this, fine, whatever.
yeah,
Managed to repeat it then. Oh, finally.
yeah. So, I don't know what else to say about
No,
Andretti
they did
Global. We're
just a really nice
just
job. Yeah.
glad they had a great weekend finally, and they get all three drivers to have great stops, keep it on the track, don't blow anything up, and they're rewarded. Kyle Kirkwood is now third in the points. We talked about him being the heir apparent for somebody that could reach Pelot, but I mean, you go back to Aaron McLaren. I mean, Pato O'Ward's in second place.
Yeah, again, we need those two to be more consistent with those top finishes now. I mean,
Yes.
Pato, okay, he had an all right weekend overall, considering where he started, but again, your Pato award start better as well, and then
Yeah.
we can get everyone stop being Scott Dixon, qualify better, finish better. End of
Yeah.
story.
Chip Ganassi Racing. I think we've mentioned all these drivers except for Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon finished 11th, just outside the top 10 after starting 10th. So, I mean, probably not the weekend that he would have hoped for, but again, another driver
But
that kind of came in and came out unscathed.
but he
So,
has made history because this is his 409th career start, which makes
yep,
him the most experienced IndyCar driver in history, which
yeah,
isn't too shabby. Um, I didn't have much else to say about the team. I think I was just Finn Simpson P5. I was just happy because again, it's
right,
we keep
yeah,
saying he's in this awkward shadow with these other two, and he finishes ahead of Dixon. Obviously, Pillow doesn't finish the race, which I also just wrote down. So you're telling me there's a chance.
yeah,
And then Simpson just kind of capitalized on all of it beautifully. And again, I think that's what we want to see in terms of those drivers that we're making reference with Nolan Siegel and with Jacob Abel. We don't need you to be in this position all the time, but when the opportunity is there, take it, use it, and at least show that if you go out of a race, but you're in pursuit of that, I think depending on if you go out and it's kind of a late lunge to try and get into that position, we wouldn't mind as much either because it shows you at least you're going for it and you go, right,
yeah,
this is my chance. I'd rather you did that than hold station in like P15 or something and then just don't go anywhere. So the
yeah,
fact that he capitalized on it and finished in fifth, love it.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, he was there. I mean, essentially on merit. I mean, yeah,
Mm,
you can get to the front on pit strategy, but to be able to
still got to stay there.
remain there, you gotta be able to hold off people. And was it the when he held off Will Power? I mean, Will Power.
Mm,
I mean, it took what 4 or 5 laps for Will Power to get by him,
longer than I thought, yeah.
and yeah, definitely a lot longer than what I think a lot of us thought. So,
Probably including willpower going, wait, why am I still behind you?
yeah. A.J Foyt Racing. I think this is could have been a great weekend, but was a good weekend. You have
Yeah.
Dave Malukas, qualified second. Great, great qualifying effort for him. Ultimately finishes 14th after having a late drive-through penalty for bumping Alex
He,
Palou.
he 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 took one for the team there, and I appreciate it.
I think he took one for the series.
Yeah, the team was everyone else in this instance. It was
Yeah, yeah. And but then Santino Ferrucci, obviously career best finish for him, finishing second runner up after qualifying 21st. I
Yeah, I mean that by itself is impressive, and then you go and look at where he finished last week. He's really building on his result from Indy 500, two back-to-back really strong performances.
mhm.
And I mean, Malukas obviously had a great weekend last weekend. Admittedly, here less so, but up to that point, was going pretty well. So
Yeah.
really coming into their own there, and you'd love to see that because again, especially you, Nate, because you were saying at the start of the season, I come on, I don't
I
know,
hung my
man,
hat
I
on
don't
this
know,
team. I was
big
like,
time here.
this is the one. This is the one that's going to surprise everybody. I think we're maybe we're starting to see it a little bit. Ferrucci's still in the top 10 in points. He's 10th place, and then Malukas um, is in 13th. I think he may have gotten passed by a few drivers, but yeah, I mean, it's just I think this is a season that they're going to be able to build upon, and I think once we get
It's that
down
positive
to
momentum again.
yeah, once we get down to
But
the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if both of these drivers make their way into the top 10. Another team that kind of had a quiet weekend, I feel like, Juncos Hollinger, but a quiet
yeah,
weekend in a good way.
yeah. I mean, I was going through the notes, and I didn't have anything. It was just an anonymous race from them. I mean, two decent results, both in the top 20. I mean, Daly P17, Rob P15. No idea how they got there because I just don't think we really saw anything of them. I think potentially in the practice and qualifying highlights that I watched, they were there. I mean, they were there definitely, and maybe I saw
In the
them.
first
But in
session,
the in
anyway.
well, usually, yeah. Um, but in the race, again, maybe if I paused one of the long straights and they would have been there in the background, but that would have been about
So,
it. And
yeah,
but again, we say consistently, if you have an anonymous race, most of the time, not a bad thing. And like you say, not too bad a thing.
yeah. Stingray Rob, these drivers qualified absolutely horribly. Daly 25th, Rob 26th. Um, Stingray Rob has, believe it or not, I feel like he's strung together several positive finishes here this month. And
He's at risk of becoming a driver we don't talk about until the end of the season when we look at his results and go, okay, in the grand scheme of things, you're not setting the world alight, but how on earth did you manage to do this? Because this is also quietly impressive in a different way.
yeah, this being a driver that I don't feel like we expect a lot with the combination of the team and the driver. We don't expect a lot from him, and so when he does have this 11 position gain throughout the race, you're like, oh, kudos, well done, sir.
It's also that awkward thing. I think I've mentioned this to you before, and possibly even in episodes here. We have this problem in Formula Two, and especially in Formula Three. If you have that bad qualifying, if you don't finish in the top 10 or just outside the top 10, we're probably not going to notice you or talk about you. But that doesn't mean you didn't have a good race because I've seen drivers before go from like P29 to P12 and I go, that's actually pretty damn good when you think about it. But because there's no points on offer, you look at them when this championship stands, you go, never mind. But you go, but at the same time, as much as they wish they could have a better qualifying, like you say, they both did a horrible job of that. At least with the racecraft, they were able to make very good progress. And as I said about Ferrari a couple of weeks ago, I don't mind if you qualify terribly as long as you finish well.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I do mind if you're
uh,
Scott Dixon, but that's a separate thing.
right. Meyer Shank Racing. Well,
Two,
I
two halves.
yeah, no kidding. I mean, Marcus Armstrong finishing sixth, just outside the top
Good.
five, which yeah, great weekend for him. Rosenquist had a decent weekend going. He just
Mm.
got caught up in the Foster incident and no fault of his own, and ended up finishing 21st, just because of the amount of attrition that we had in the race. Uh, but
I do love that about IndyCar. You can crash out of a race in such spectacular style, and yet you're still classified as finishing in 21st.
yeah,
It amuses me so much. Like, no, you didn't finish. But
yeah,
it's just it's the way it's done in IndyCar. I
yeah.
still can't quite get my head around that because I see that sometimes when you beat me to the notes for position to go. I'm pretty sure he crashed. And you're like, oh yeah, no, they've got a different thing, right? Yes.
Yep, we do it a little bit different over here. Participation trophies and what have you. So. But I mean, all in all, I think other than, the fairly spectacular crash that he was involved in, I think he had a decent weekend going. I did have,
Mm.
he had an incident on track earlier in the race, bringing out a caution, but
Yeah,
was able to continue. And but I don't know, maybe it was a
maybe he's hoping to get
karma.
the incident out of the way sooner, and then
Got
didn't
caught up
quite
in
pan out
somebody
the same
else's.
way.
So,
Yeah.
um, a team that I had kind of an anonymous weekend until the end was Rahal Letterman, Lanigan Racing. Foster. We talked about him having the suspension failure, which is very uh, uncommon in IndyCar, and that was when they showed the replay of that wreck. And you were right when you said earlier. It's like I think we all kind of like ooh ah.
It
Um,
reminded me of what you said about when you were watching Indy 500 on track last week, and I think it was Seagulls crashed, and it came up on the
it did.
jumbotron, and you just the collective crowd are going, "Ooh, I'm not sure
Ooh.
about that." It's just reminded me of
Uh,
that.
but yeah, great. I think a great finish for Marcus Armstrong. That's a team that I think we I don't think we expected as much from this team um, going into the season. I think after they kind of had their rehire in the off season and teams got jumbled around, I think we're just kind of like, well, okay, man, MSR's kind of this is the end of their performance, and then we got both drivers are doing pretty well. I mean, Felix Roth was still sixth in the points.
Yeah, I think he's kind of the A list version of Stingray Rob there in terms of I don't know how you've managed this. We're not expecting too much, but also we kind of are with him. I feel like he's a driver where I've got something ingrained from when I started watching IndyCar of he's good, and so I expect him to be up there. And he hasn't been all the time, but like you say, he's still somehow P6 in the standings. So
Yeah.
he's going about it quietly, and I don't mind that. And I think just to wrap up our RHLL because there's not much else to say about them there.
Yeah,
It's felt a little bit unfortunately back to normal, but
I think
I
so.
think
Yeah.
with Di Francesco and Rahal, they had moments in the race that were good. It's
Mhm.
just when it all kind of petered out and settled down to well, settled down as much as this race did, but towards the end when everything just settled, it didn't go too well for them. But
Yeah,
oh well.
Rahal having the issues on pit road with stuck lug nut kind of ruined his day. Finishes 20th. I don't think that's necessarily any real fault of his own.
No, it
Obviously
just
qualified
hurts a lot when
strong.
you qualified
Yeah,
in fifth. Yeah, like you
yeah,
say, it's unfortunate, and I feel like Di Francesco's race of start 23rd, finish 23rd doesn't also reflect his race as accurately
right.
as I would like that to be.
Carpenter Racing. Alexander
Back to
Rossi.
normal for me, I think, on that one.
Yeah, yeah. Alexander Rossi qualified 16th, finishes in the top 10, finishes 10th.
Yeah, kind of what we expect from him at this point, just dragging the car to places that not expecting too much. And
Mhm.
I don't want to think that Christian Rasmussen peaked last week, but also this week's result maybe indicates that's potentially what happened.
Yeah, he had a mechanical issue that took him out, and probably not the finish that he would have wanted after solid qualifying effort for the team.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, I feel like the qualifying, like you say, was decent, but and again flashes of stuff in the race, but I think ultimately even without the technical error, let's say, that wasn't going to be a result where he would have been still as high up or close to where he would have where he did start, so I'm afraid.
yeah. Dale Coyne Racing, I think this is other than Jacob Abel's career best finish of
Mhm.
18th is maybe a weekend that they're hoping to forget, especially for
Bad luck
Rinus
for
VK.
VK.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just before the race even really got going, I mean, he had great qualifying effort. Starting in the top 10 in seventh, and what 5, 6 laps into the race comes into the pits and has to call it a day.
So it never comes out again.
Yeah. So finishing last place always going to sting.
Yeah, I think the only silver lining for him is that obviously it's not reflective on him or the team really. It's just bad luck. I think spoilers for later, you might have an idea of who I'm choosing for a hard luck award.
But last team, PREMA Racing, I think that was,
There is a good thing within this, I think, and that is Forsen because okay, P16, I think he finished. It's not a
yep,
bad result for him given his season. You kind
true.
of eliminate the pole position from Indy because
Mm,
obviously that was quite something, but you just
yeah,
look at the results and how much bad luck he in particular has had. P16, you'd kind of just take that, I think, because you go, did I get through all of that? There was a lot going on. And you can see what happened to your teammate, and you go, think I got away with it? Cool. Right. Quickly, run. Run.
yeah, I liked that accident he had was a little scary as well. It was another one
Hmm.
where you're like, ooh,
Oh, again, that was the
uh,
commentators and
yeah,
myself just syncing up perfectly going, oh,
yeah. But yeah, I mean that hopefully they can, you know, try to
they're
put
definitely
something
t they're
together.
definitely testing the structural integrity of that car in a multitude of ways this season. I think if we're
Yeah,
treating this year as a testing year for them, and then next year, if next year they're really on it, I can look at this and go, I know what they were doing the whole time.
yeah.
It's all part of the plan.
Just gathering some information. So who was your hot team or driver this weekend?
I gotta go for Colton Herta just because I'm so damn happy to see him
Yeah,
finally have a good weekend where nothing really goes wrong. I mean, yes, it would have been nice for him to convert pole to the win, but I think that would have been asking too much for him. Not because he's not capable, but just because of what usually happens to him. So for him to have a clean weekend, get pole, get on the podium, be think of that.
yeah. I'm giving the hot award to the entire team.
Which again,
All
I
of
can't fault
Andretti
you for.
Global, all of Andretti Global. I feel like I gave them the hot award already once this season. I can't remember what race that
Probably
was.
Long Beach.
It could have been, yeah. And I just think they've definitely got they had the talent on track this weekend, and like I said, with her to just uh, being able to put together four clean pit stops makes a world of difference on how that team could finish. So,
Who'd have thought,
uh,
eh?
right, yeah, you have a good pit stop strategy, and you manage to get all four wheels on at the same time. Anything can happen.
I feel like I need this really southern accent to say something about pit stop. Like, ah, you get a good pit stop, you can have a good race. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I can't believe I didn't think of this.
My not hot. I had trouble trying to pick one. I even have a question mark here. I mean, looking back through how all the teams finished, I feel like they kind of did what I expected them to do. I don't feel
Just
like
maybe
any
that still
driver.
disappoints you for this team. Maybe that's
Yeah,
what it is.
I wrote down Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan as my not hot, but that was only because I'm like I can't find a single driver that had a bad weekend that was outside of our what we would consider the norm. And I just I
I'm
had
kind of
trouble.
glad you gave that phrase because I'm going to use that to justify mine, mainly because I think this is the only time this year I'm going to be able to get to you to do it. So mine not hot's Alex Palou.
Hmm,
I know it's not his fault that he went out of the
almost
race.
spit out my coffee there.
But
Oh,
I got to take the opportunities where I can. So I think this is, in terms of a race, he, definitionally not hot.
well, I mean that you
That's
could
about as
almost
close to
classify.
that's
Yeah,
about
but
as
there was
close as I can get to getting away with it.
not really any fault of his own though. Maybe that's more of a hard luck.
Let's not analyze it too much.
My hard luck award, I'm definitely going with Louis Foster and Felix Rosenquist. I mean, definitely no fault of either one of those drivers. You know, Foster having the mechanical issue and taking out both those cars in pretty spectacular fashion when it
It
really,
get just really unfortunate if Rosenquist had been again another one of these instances ever so slightly to the left.
yeah,
Foster could have just and would have been going, Christ, I got close to that. I'm glad I
yeah.
avoided it. But unfortunately, Felix just like kind of you'd think mid crash, you just freeze frame you. You're probably wondering how I got here.
Yeah, well, and that's one of those things he would not have seen
No, well,
Foster
see,
coming.
you felt the
Yeah,
onboard, and he's just driving along my business, and bam, you
yeah,
go, oh,
yeah,
no, that's you done.
yeah. I mean, he was setting up for the corner. I don't remember who it was that was directly behind him.
I think Stingray Rob might have even been. So they were saying they got one of the onboards from one of the drivers behind that you
Yeah,
could see a little bit from. It might have been him.
yeah, and but yeah, I think both those drivers just unfortunate for them. I hope both of them are okay. I know Rosenquist kind of sat there on the side pod, and then they brought the ambulance over in a stretcher. I'm like, ooh, it's never good. They have to bring a stretcher out, but he was upright. He was alert. Gave everybody a thumbs
Hmm.
up. I think it was just precaution. Um,
Yeah.
Louis Foster obviously really hard hit in the tire barriers in the runoff, and very lucky for him. They were
The
kind
most shocking
of
thing for me about him was the fact that when they were talking to him afterwards, I hadn't realized he appears to have grown this massive 80s style moustache from somewhere.
yeah, very
You know, did you lose did
NASCAR-esque.
you
Yeah.
lose a bet? What's going on here?
Well, I think he was sporting that at the 500 too. I think.
I must have missed that.
But yeah, who are you giving hard luck to?
Renus VK, just
Venus
because,
VK.
so early on and nothing he did as well. So yeah, that's just bad luck all round there, I think.
Yeah. I think we have a section for news in the notes. Really haven't there hasn't been a whole
So
lot
we,
of
we kind of
news
need some
since our
to,
last
yeah.
episode, which sometimes that's good.
And it's a quick turnaround as well with race weekends. So there's not much that has mercifully happened. I think we've got so much news during the last couple of race weekends that the in between is just now a nice time to digest it all and move on
Yeah.
and just go. Please let nothing else come out for a minute.
Yeah. Well, we get that stretch after the month of May where we get a weekend off.
Yes.
There's no race this coming weekend, but we will be back. We've got a race on June 15th, the Bommarito Automotive Group 500 from Gateway in St. Louis.
Where do they get the
So
names? I do love them.
they we're going back to an oval. This one's kind of a strange one. It's fast. This is one where we're going to separate, I think, some people. It's
The
going to
men
be a
from the
fun one, I
boys.
think. And we've got a few former winners racing. Joseph Newgarden has really been kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to former winners at this track. I've got it here in notes. He won in 2017, 2020. He won the second race of the weekend there. It was a doubleheader weekend during COVID.
Hmm.
2021, 2022, and was last year's winner. So,
This is going to be then my test bed, I think, for him. If he can't even get on the podium this time around, then I'm going to start asking more questions about him. That's what I'm going to do. There's my warning to Mr. Newgarden right there.
Scott Dixon also has a couple victories here. 2021 race number one, and 2023. And then we also have Will Power, won back in 2018. So, um, kind of the who's who of who has been trying to play catch up this season. I feel like this
I
could be
think
the
it's
race
time.
where one of these drivers turns it around. So I think that wraps it up. Thiemo, appreciate co-hosting with us again, and we will be back in a few weeks to cover our next race.